include in this patch is just breathtaking.
Idiots.
Pretty much. An interesting article at Kotaku UK emerged this week looking into the development of the ever more delayed Star Citizen. The report paints the picture for the second largest crowdfunded game in history as one of the developers being in over their head from the word go. While Cloud Imperium has made great steps in organizing themselves and progressing on the game, many former developers believe the game will never be released as promised and will be a disaster. However, others claim it will be a pinnacle achievement in gaming. The truth, of course, always lies somewhere in the middle. However, for now, the article is a very interesting read, and I mean, it was like 3 or 4 pages long, so I didn't include the whole thing, but it does a great job of going into like where they were at the beginning when they were still a really small team, and like all these new things where they were farming them out to different companies and then trying to make them all work together.
Well, I think first of all, I think what's making people so skeptical about this has been the No Man's Sky launch, and I think people are going back and looking at other crowdfunded games. Well, I mean,
this game has been under fire for long before No Man's Sky was an issue.
That's true, but I'm sure that No Man's Sky didn't help its case at all.
If you're so excited about worthless garbage, you want this too?
I mean, what's interesting here though is the notion that the developer was kind of they had a vision for what they wanted, and then they ended up getting more money than they knew what to do with, and it made them add things to the project, and now it feels like to the point it's overpromising.
Well, and that's kind of what they talked about, how like when the game was first coming up, space simulation was such a starved market. Like people wanted a space sim.
Still do.
Everyone threw money. Like anyone who was remotely into space sims threw money at this.
Right.
And then they were just like, oh my God, this is a lot of money.
Right.
We have a lot. Now we have to promise more stuff. And that was kind of, well, that's what they felt they needed to do, I guess.
That? Like, that's ridiculous. If you get more money than you need, just deliver on your original promises, right? Get that out there so that way, whatever it is you want to do next, people know you can deliver on it. They're going to throw even more money at you.
I think that's probably. I mean, like,
instead you end up with No Man's Sky.
I think you know, over ambition is the death of a lot of games, because you know they start with an original concept and they go, okay, yeah, this would make a good game, and then they end up heaping systems upon systems upon systems on top of it because we have the processing power to do it. Why not? Why not? We have we're not limited by storage. We're not limited by processing power. Throw more stuff at it. I mean, we can just throw, you know, a different point system onto it and just, you know, paste it on top of the game.
Met7 in the chat saying No Man's Sky and Star Citizen are very different. Once Star Citizen releases, I'd like you to come back here, remind us of this conversation, and we'll see if that still stands. Because if it falls to the exact same pitfalls as No Man's Sky, doesn't matter if it isn't an entirely, completely different game. If it fails the same way, they might as well be the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, it's such a classic blunder in gaming. I remember taking game design courses. Day 2's lesson was scope. Yeah. Understand the scope of your game.
Right.
And stick to that.
No.
And always have...
Oh, you failed!
Oh my God!
Look at the camera.
Whoa!
Was it a mouthwash
at
joke?
the camera.
Yes.
You make eye contact and you apologize.
And now, yeah, it should be
No.
Full screen.
Full screen. Look
Apologize
at the camera and admit your fuck up.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Now, it should be pointed out, of course, Star Citizen in recent times, like this article really is looking at the beginning of their development when things were just a cluster bleep, and they have done a much better job of getting themselves organized since.
Sure.
But there are still lots of looming doubts, and it's just a really cool read. I recommend everyone go check it out.
And I don't think anyone's saying that No Man's Sky and Star Citizen are the same game or they're doomed to the same fate. I don't think anyone is saying that, but I think that a much more critical lens is going to be placed on
Star Citizen because of No Man's Sky.
Correct, because in the macro sense, you're looking at a space sim that is an indie dev project.
That is huge.
Both of those are true of both of those games. So if that is strictly the lens that you're looking at it through, then I think comparing the two are fair, no matter what the finer points or the more granular points of that argument may be.
I just think the overall stance and view on crowdfunding has changed from where it was 5 years ago.
Oh, man.
It has like drastically been like cast in this darker light now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone that's out seeking crowdfunding for their project these days has a much steeper hill to climb than they did back in 2009, 2010, 2011.
And people were selling potato salad.
Right. I mean, you heard all of these crazy crowdfunding successes based on either really good ideas or really crazy ideas. But we knew that couldn't last forever, that was not sustainable. And again, we've talked about this on this show before, but this is why we started looking to the radio industry to be able to help us to create more content. And that's what we're in a sense, that's what we're looking to do with this whole, this brand new radio show is, extend our brand onto a whole new medium, but at the same time use the medium and the uniqueness of the product being on the medium to be able to drive interest, because it's simply not something that you hear commonly talked about in, even in competent means.
And what's great about that is if there is any form of success there, it's going to reflect back onto the other products that we have here as well.
Absolutely, yeah. But relying solely on crowdfunding for the entirety of your product is probably a really bad business plan. If that's your business plan, is to go strictly crowdfunding, I would look at that all over again, because it's got to be a mix. Crowdfunding was very successful for us to be able to launch our content network and to be able to produce greater and greater amounts of content. That's been clear through the way that you guys have supported us through Patreon. And now, when you look at the long-term viability of crowdfunding, it's just not what it was 3 or 4 years ago. And it's forcing not just indie developers to think differently about how they try to seek funding for their product, but I think a lot of media outlets too, and a lot of podcasts, homebrew projects like ours are trying to find new ways to monetize. The good news is, though, that in that time, things like podcasting as a medium have become far more visible because of shows like Serial, because of shows like before that, WTF Pod and things like that. It is now viewed as a medium that does have the potential to generate not just revenue to the producers that are making it, but also to generate interest on the part of advertisers and subsequently drive people to the product that they're that they're advertising at the end of the day. So there is much more of an industry that exists around things like this show than existed 5-6 years ago, but you don't see the same for games and indie games specifically. So I think that this creates a really kind of dangerous, a dangerous market where you've had indie developers who are starting to swell in content, and they and because of that, they're creating more complex and diverse content and succeeding in certain areas, but falling short in others. And it does speak overall to the strength of indie development and the strength of crowdfunding. So two things to keep an eye on. Especially when you
have companies like, wasn't it Sony who pulled that Shenmue 3 stunt on Kickstarter?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And then, these big giant companies that really have nothing to lose, wrecking the whole concept of crowdfunding for what? To gauge interest?
Yeah.
Ugh, yeah.
It really does seem like a pretty craven attempt to be able to use a different means of marketing your product.
Penis.
Good contribution.
CD Projekt Red is running a